everyone, and welcome to Cut and Splice. Today we are going to be discussing Dark City. This is one of those movies that came out in February of 1998, so I was still 12. I hadn't turned 13 yet. It's one of those movies that shouldn't work, that the studios basically decided to do everything that they could to make it not work, at least financially, and yet it does. And it does in such a masterful and unique way that it has produced this massive cult following. And I found myself over the years, since I saw the theatrical cut first, but also a lot of people forget that when they released the director's cut on DVD, Roger Ebert actually volunteered to record his own director's commentary for free because he loved the movie so much. This movie, to me, is a perfect example of a bygone era of what cinema used to be and what it should still be, in that it's original, in that it's not based off of any pre-existing material. It's an original screenplay. It's unique. It's risky. It's gritty. It's fun. It has elements of science fiction. It has elements of horror. It has elements of noir, crime drama, mystery. It's one of the few movies that incorporates amnesia without turning into a Lifetime movie. And it deals with really complicated ideas about what it is to actually be a human being. So, I mean, when I was a young idiot kid, it was just something that kind of looked cool, and it had its moments that were kind of cheesy, which I even still like nowadays. But as I've gotten older and as I've watched it more and more, my appreciation for the movie has only grown.
And I will add, it's a movie where the lead character looks like the director Joe Wright. I don't know why, but like I watched that movie and I know Rufus Sewell, right? That's his name.
Sewell, yeah.
Sewell, yeah.
Sewell, sorry. I know him. I also I saw him in the Amazon series, the one with the Nazis.
Oh yeah, High Castle.
High Castle, yeah, I watched the first season of that. He was good in that too. But I don't know. I watched this movie again, and all I could think of is, wow, he looks like Joe Wright.
I don't think I would have gone that direction, but I mean, he doesn't not look like Joe Wright, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I just listened to a podcast with Joe Wright and Roger Deakins, so it's funny. It's just on my mind today specifically too. It's kind of funny that I just watched this movie the other day, and then the podcast I listened to today.
I think it's more that they just have the same haircut.
Yeah. They also have, if you look at it, I think it's like, does he have blue eyes? There's something there. It's okay. It's all good. It's just funny because I guess a lot of people also compare Christopher Nolan to DiCaprio, and like they said when they made Inception,
maybe the shape of their face. That's about it.
Yeah, something with the hair. The hair is like really slick, and obviously DiCaprio looks better, or at least to some people. I find them very squinty eyes. Like I don't, but yes, no, it's funny. Or somebody made a point at some point. It's like for the first time, someone looks better than the director, because Christopher Nolan is usually the most attractive person. Or something like that. Oh, it's all the fan boys of Christopher Nolan. In any case, but going back to Dark City, what about you, Jason? I guess you just very recently rewatched it, and what was your interest in going back to it?
I've always loved this movie since the first time I saw it. I was going to ask you guys, not to get sidetracked, because I mean, I did want to answer that question, but I wanted to ask you guys, none of us saw this in theater, right? Like, I mean, we all saw it after it had been out for a while, right?
Correct. For me, at least.
Yes, I think I saw it like probably mid 2000s, if I, yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to check because, I mean, this is like Matt was saying, it really is a great example of like a, almost like a cult classic, because it didn't do anything, remarkable when it was in theaters or anything, and largely because of the decisions that they made to change it the way they changed it. If this director's cut is anything to go off of, at least. But yeah, it's one of those movies for me that I've never made a list of this or anything, but I would say there's probably at least a half dozen or a dozen movies or so where, it's one of those ones where you see it for the first time, on DVD or something when you were younger, and suddenly you go, oh my gosh, people had said something about this, or I'd heard about it or something like that, and you go, how on earth did I never see this? It's got such a great cast, and it's such a good movie, and and it's more than likely influenced a lot of other movies and other things, and it's just it's one of those ones where it was like when I remember seeing it and just thinking I was so happy to see this movie. It was so right up my alley. And that was the theatrical version, which kind of sucks compared to the director's cut, which is significantly better in many ways. So and then Matt was talking about it a lot at the time, and I just thought, this would definitely be a good one to talk about, like he was saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually think that I think I had a stronger reaction to it the first time I saw it. I think it had a better impression on me. This one was very solid. If nothing else, it felt very fast. It was very fast paced. It almost felt rushed. So I can't even imagine now what the theatrical version looks like. But maybe I was younger, so a rushed cut felt fine to me back then. But I remember having a very strong reaction to it when I felt like I always called it the indie version of the Matrix, essentially,
Yeah.
in a way, because it's not heavy on action. There's some action, but it's more suspense, detective story, almost like Chinatown type of thing, noir. So it's definitely different than the Matrix, but very similar in themes and conclusions and things of that sort. Not completely, but
in plot points too.
Sorry, and plot points too. Yeah, and we can get to it in the second half of the show. But yes, so it's tough to measure it because really I remembered very little about this movie. Actually, the ending, which we'll get to, I remembered it differently. It'd be funny to see what you guys like think of my. I actually thought it ended differently. So little things like that actually surprised me, but more than anything, I appreciated that it was very fast paced. It's like along those lines of movies, say like The Dark Knight and others, where there's constant nonstop action, or at least in this case, not per se action, but a lot is happening, but it's not overwhelming. It's handled very well, and it's not too confusing, unlike Tenet. And so you go along with it, and towards the end, it really comes together well in a very satisfying way, and it's not a cop-out way. I mentioned, I think, made a post about just watch like the Midnight Special, the one by that director. And that one also, I felt like it was the complete opposite in a way, which is funny. It's a very slow movie, almost too slow in the beginning, even though I like slow movies. But towards the end, it picked up and it really made a good point. And there wasn't a cop out in the end. There was actual conclusion to the mystery, and it was a satisfying conclusion. Maybe not as satisfying as a movie like Dark City, because it really just Dark City to me feels like a very, very good Star Trek episode. It would be like a top 10 Star Trek episode. If,
Yeah. And incidentally, by the way, saving any conversations about the ending for later, that is a major reason to watch the director's cut and not the theatrical cut, because the studios really forced the hand of Alex Proyas for the theatrical cut, and basically Kiefer Sutherland's character Daniel Schrader has a voiceover at the beginning of the movie that basically gives away 90% of it. So I mean, if you watch the theatrical cut first, it really takes some mental work to watch the director's cut and realize, holy crap, this is what this movie was always supposed to be, and try to actually experience it the way that the director intended. The theatrical cut just kind of like, it's like the movie Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage, that was directed by Brian De Palma. It was like billed as a mystery was solved in the first 20 minutes. Yeah, the director's cut is, see that first, then watch the thing cut, and then realize why we're so blessed to have the director's cut.
Yeah, and we can bring it up for sure in the second half, because I am curious. I have so little recollection of the first one, except for my general impressions and the ending that or at least the way I remembered it. So yeah, I think that is interesting. But overall, as far as like my impression, I do think it's a really solid movie. I would definitely recommend it, especially for people that are maybe younger now and haven't seen it, and because it's been under the radar, and maybe they know about The Matrix and they know about some of the other movies from like the late 90s. But yeah, like this one and Equilibrium are two movies that are, I feel like, for younger people now, if they haven't seen them, are definitely movies that are worth their time to see where the sci-fi fiction was at the time. There was some daring moves happening in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, and this is another element of the film that I found to be particularly affecting, especially watching it more than almost a quarter century after its release. How well the visual effects stand up for the most part.
One or two crazy moments, but other than that, pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few times when, the only time to do it, the only way to do it was using CGI. So you're seeing late 90s CGI, but most of the scenes, like with the city changing around you and these really intricate, very momentous and grandiose visual effects shots, they were done in camera. They were done with miniatures and doing stop motion and all that stuff. That shit held up. Like, all that stuff looks better today than a lot of the stuff that we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah.
In that sense, I mean, it's a visual masterpiece. I mean, obviously Dariusz Wolski, the cinematographer, did some amazing color noir work on the film too. But I mean, the visual effects team really pulled something special off with this, that really shouldn't be lost on people. And I mean, you compare it to the second Matrix movie, where you got Neo fighting that horde of Smiths that basically looks like a PlayStation 1 game, to Dark City, and which came out years before it. I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, Dark City has better visual effects. So
Well, I mean, that's kind of a weird comparison, considering that they were doing something that had never really been done before with that thing. And, I mean, granted, they failed in the sense that they didn't give their people enough time to clean up the animations, and so it looks as bad as you're talking about. But I mean, they were using that whole thing of like putting green screen style mask on a bunch of stuntmen to give them all the same face that could actually be where they could actually have Hugo Weaving's like express and make faces and such, and try to pull that off. That's not exactly the same thing as having a bunch of extras around you.
I mean, it's fair to say that the Matrix gals now were, they were pushing the envelope in terms of technology there, but I think that there's a lot of and actually we can talk about Proyas's later career when he kind of went full CGI on like iRobot.
Yes.
And knowing in that maybe that's a symptom of people using technology before it was ready to be used. But I mean, I think Dark City was just a perfect example of I mean, that's the thing. If Dark City were made in 2004, it probably wouldn't have looked as good.
Oh yeah, I
Just
think
because
those guys on the Corridor crew talk about this all the time, about how like in some ways, depending on how you're talking about it, there's definitely an argument to be made that the 90s had like some of the best movies ever. And one of the easiest ways to make that statement is to talk about visual effects, because things like the people who took the time to do things right, like this movie and the first Matrix film and Jurassic Park and all those ones like that. You have a little bit of CGI that's just enough to make things amazing, but not to look trashy. And then suddenly people started using it as like a crutch, and you had a good 6 or 7 years where everything looked like Ang Lee's The Hulk movie.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you feel like we should move on to the second half? I felt
Yeah,
like
sure.
any other thoughts about recommendation?
I was just going to say real quickly, not having anything to do with the plot or anything like that, but just the cast is like so outstanding in this movie.
Yeah.
I've always loved Rufus Sewell. I think I'm saying his last name correctly, but you usually get to see him as a bad guy, and this is like the movie where once I saw it, that's like from then on in my head, I just thought of him as Murdoch. Like this one of those movies that leave that kind of imprint, kind of thing. And
imprint is the right word.
yeah, there you go. He's so good, as even though he kind of stands around in that trench coat most of the movie, and Kiefer Sutherland definitely looked like he was like trying to do something with that doctor character and kind of making him memorable. And this is definitely one of the, when you look at William Hurt's career of questionable movies and fantastic performances, this is definitely one of the fantastic performances. Uh, but I was going to say the thing that caught my attention really well on this watch was that I mean, Jennifer Connelly obviously is always excellent and gorgeous, but this I was thinking about those scenes. There's 2 scenes where she sings a pretty decent amount of a song in those like nightclub type scenes.
Yeah.
And it always makes me think when I see those scenes like that in movies. I don't know how good or how comfortable Jennifer Connelly is with singing. It just made me think about like I think it's I think it was the director commentary or something like that on Blue Velvet, where he was saying, like those nightclub scenes where they have I believe it's Isabella Rossellini. Yeah, where she's singing that, he's saying like, yeah, we just told her that, she was very nervous, she didn't want to do it, was very nervous about doing it, I should say. He says like, just do the best you can. And then we filmed it a bunch of times through, and we had enough to edit together a performance, kind of thing. And I'm sure, based on the way he was describing it, it doesn't really sound like she would, disagree with that sort of thing. That's not the only example. There's like so many examples of actors who had to sing something in a performance, and they just kind of make it work, with movie magic. And I just wonder when I watch this one, because I have no idea if she's really good at singing or not, but it looks and sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, the funny thing.
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was mostly gonna say it's actually one of the only cringe-worthy moments for me. I don't know what it is, but it's maybe I'm more sensitive to musical things. It felt a bit just too good for sure. It doesn't sound exactly like her voice, and obviously they always, even if it is the voice of the actor, they record it in the studio, not on set, so it's always sweetened and sounds very different. But I don't know why it felt a bit too much, like almost as if it didn't fit her to be a singer.
Well, yeah, it sounds that. I guess that's why my brain immediately went to that memory of that other movie, and that and the director saying that, because it does it rings as artificial, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I sort of I forgive it because I know that this movie, especially knowing that I've seen it before, that it's very hyper. It almost feels at times that even like the audio is like not perfectly in sync when people are talking. There's something about it that's very almost like a spaghetti western. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's just it's very hyper. I don't know what's the word, not hyper realistic because that's the opposite, but just hyper
Real.
dramatized.
Well,
Yeah, and that's why I forgive it. I almost feel like a movie that is so over the top. It's okay for it to have moments like that because it's just trying to set up this world that's just a little bit off kilt, and then it pays off in the end when the mystery is
well,
resolved. Yeah, but
since we're in the spoilers are okay portion,
Yeah.
do you think it's
so let's start the second half then. Yes, because we didn't officially get to there because Jason
yeah,
wanted
right?
to
Well,
talk about the cast.
I mean, I just think it might be worth actually talking about like what the movie's about and
It's a good
like
entry point. Yes,
and like the
so
plot and
here we
everything,
go. The spoilers. Yes.
right? Um,
Why don't you do that, Matt?
so we're basically set off on this journey with John to figure out exactly what's going on in this world and what his place is in it. And pretty early on, John discovers that he has the same ability as the strangers to tune to kind of manipulate the world around him, but he doesn't really know what it means. So
Or
I
at
guess
least
that's
the first sign is that he can be put to sleep. That's one of
right.
the tell signs that he's got some sort of powers.
Yeah.
But in the director's cut, they do, I don't know at what point in the movie, but he does mention that halfway through it or something that they brought them here to some degree or another. He didn't say the word aliens, but he did say that it's basically all part of an experiment, and that's
Yes.
revealed. We just don't know what that experiment is, but we do find out halfway through the movie that there is something going
Yeah.
on, and there is like these overlords that are controlling basically the world to every extent. The only thing that's not revealed is the final mystery of where they are and who are they or what's their existence, which technically I'm not sure, but that's and then we can get to that. Like, what does happen in the end? Are they actual humans or are they copies of humans that were experimented on? So I think that's might even be left to interpretation in a way.
I think that the kind of the parts you were just talking about and everything, I think that the director's cut definitely does a really good job, like you were just kind of mentioning, of slowly revealing layer after layer after layer, because they give you enough to to make your brain start thinking and everything. But it's kind of like when you're comparing the effect of the director's cut and the theatrical, the first 5 minutes of the theatrical, where there's this voiceover that just explains everything, um, takes away all, well, not all, but let's say 90% of the mystery, and it just becomes kind of a thriller at that point, because you're just a suspense type of thing, because you more or less know what's going on. You're on the ride with Murdoch, with the discovery, but you know, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't know to what extent. You're still waiting for it to be revealed visually to you, but you more or less know the biggest reveals that are going to come. You just don't know how and when, and what it's going to look like. So that epic moment when all the characters are coming together, the wife and Murdoch and the detective and the strangers, and they all are drawn to that one spot at the beach.
Shell Beach. Yeah.
Shell Beach, and they bust through the wall. I mean, in the theatrical version, the theatrical version, you're basically just, they're aliens. They're in space and that they're not on Earth. That it's some sort of thing like that, and you're basically just going, well, okay. He says, that there's nothing there. He says that they, whatever, and Kiefer Sutherland is kind of giving them clues, and you already know they're in space, so you have to just sort of assume they're going to get to the edge of the ship at some point. And sure enough, it happens, and it's a nice visual reveal, but that's it. Whereas in the theatrical, it's kind of amazing.
In the director's cut.
Sorry, yes, you're right, Joe. Sorry, director's cut. It's kind of amazing because all those pieces are coming together, and like you said, they kind of drop these. I wouldn't call them hints, but they give you just enough information to where you start going, oh wow, okay, and then it just builds and builds and builds up to that moment where they bust through the wall, and sure enough, it's revealed, and it's so great that the William Hurt's character, the inspector, his little story in this, is that he's just looking for the truth. And massive spoiler, sadly, he dies fighting in that moment, and kind of semi protecting those people. But in doing so, when him and the other stranger like float off into space, he gets to finally see and grasp the full scope of everything, and right before he dies, like, sees the very nature of everything that he's been searching for. So it's kind of a massive moment that works.
And that's actually kind of an important element. Like you just think about both the theatrical cut and the director's cut early in the movie have that action scene with Murdoch and the strangers in front of that billboard.
Sure.
Where one of the strangers is killed, and he actually sees one of those, creepy crawly thingies crawling out of the dead stranger's skull. So something's amiss here. There's probably an alien presence. There's probably something. There's something not human, not of this world going on. But in the director's cut, you're left with this question of, is this an alien invasion?
Precisely.
Whereas in the theatrical cut, the voiceover from Daniel Schrader, Kiefer Sutherland's character, tells you right away, they brought us here. So you know that they're on a ship, or you know that they're somewhere other than Earth.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I don't remember that, and maybe that's a good thing, and that's why I had a very good experience when I first watched it. Now I want to watch it. Like, I have to now rent it just for those 5 minutes, so I can like listen to that audio, like to that. When did the director's cut come out? Like recently?
No, I think it came out in the early 2000s.
So I wonder if that's the one that I've always seen. Maybe I've never seen the actual like theatrical cut. But yes, it's blasphemy. I think if he did reveal that it's actual aliens, then yes, it does take away the mystery. Because the biggest thing about this movie is, are they humans? Are they on Earth?
Are they dancer?
What?
Sorry, I was just making a joke about the killers.
It took me
Are
a
they
moment.
human or are they dancer? But no,
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I did. But yes, it's what's reality. That's why I mentioned the whole Star Trek reference. It's the allegory of the cave thing. It's also touches on things that Inception was touching on, but didn't do it as effectively. If life is an illusion, is it still worthwhile living? And the answer is, the wife said yes. She close to the end, she says like, it's okay. I'm okay with it if life was an illusion, if it's all just made up, as long as I'm happy, as long as I have a life, as long as I have someone to love. And that's what he essentially creates in the end. It's basically they're still stuck. They're still living in essentially what would be considered the Matrix, or a simulation of what life is, not real life. But who says that real life is not a simulation? At least now the overlord is the good guy, sort of. Hopefully he doesn't turn into a bad guy, but and not the real bad guys, the boldies. So that's like ultimately what the movie is about. And I'm not sure why I didn't pick up on it the first time I watched it, that voiceover. Maybe just I missed it or I didn't catch it. And because when I first watched it, it really took me by surprise. And for some reason, I recalled them being on a planet. It's just that it wasn't Earth. And I think it's just my memory playing games with me, because the last scene is on a beach, but technically they're still in space. It's just that he created an ocean around the ship, essentially.
Yeah.
So for some reason, my memory remembered it as they're coming out. They're not on Earth. They're on some distant planet, because there's something on Earth-like about it. But he created something that looks like a beach, which is a memorable, or at least something that's humans have a strong connection to bodies of water and beaches. It's something that we were attracted to. So he creates the illusion of, well, we can't go back to Earth. We don't know where we are. We can't, but at least I can create this illusion of normalcy, and we can at least like make that work. And it's bittersweet, but it really like had a strong effect on me the first time. The second time was, oh, it's a ship. I didn't remember that. It still works, but I kind of like the planet idea better. But it still works. It works on so many levels. It's just a bit strange. How can you really build a beach around the ship? It's a bit of a reach. And maybe that's why my mind, because I have this issue, I tend to try to fix movies, especially if I like them in my memory.
We all do that.
Like I like with the Arrival episode, we'll get to that too. But I just
Good
felt
example.
like that's a bit too much. The water around the ship, and then how does the sunrise, because he changed where the ship is directed. Where are the clouds coming from? Where's the atmosphere? It's a bit of a reach. But again, it's a fictional movie, and it's a fantasy movie.
I mean, it's also a bit of a reach that buildings can just lift themselves 8 stories high and expand and create windows right then and there at the just because somebody thought it. But
but that could be the alien technology, which I guess could also create a beach and an atmosphere.
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing, is that Murdoch can control the alien technology. But
yes,
but I get your point. I get your point. And
create matter.
Huh?
I mean, especially at the end, when beforehand you see how big the city is. Like I think of it. This is like, those images have got to be like a total wet dream for flat earthers. But anyway,
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, exactly. Very good point. Flat earthers, do watch this movie. This one's for you.
Oh yeah, definitely for you. You'll love it.
Yeah.
But you see how big it is in those few moments where they show it floating in space, and then you see at the end when he adds the water, he adds quite a bit of water all the way around it, and you don't see like what Gil was trying to imagine in his head, the planet underneath. It's basically just a bunch of circle spheres and weird shapes and things like that that are underneath the city. There isn't a lot of mass down there,
Yeah.
So really, the if we're going to believe the visuals and we're going to believe that he turned on all those faucets more or less and created this massive body of water in a donut shape around the city, you have to believe that they've got some sort of force field thing that holds the atmosphere in, which we kind of saw a little bit of evidence of with the scene where they bust the hole in the wall. But
Yeah.
also you have to kind of also figure the only way to logically believe what we're seeing at the end is that Murdoch and the other aliens with it, when they can tune, they're not just rearranging matter, they have to be able to somehow create matter, because I mean he just
Yeah.
basically creates water that's more or less doubles the mass of the entire thing that they're living on.
Yeah, that's fair. At the same time, it's one of those things where, like, if this were a 10-hour miniseries or like a complete TV series, if this were like The Expanse and they, ended the show with some kind of massive thing like this and, gave us no explanation, I would nitpick it. But one of the beauties of this movie is that it is a movie and it's self-contained, and they
Yes.
never intended there to be a sequel. It's just like your suspension of disbelief is kind of set pretty early. This is kind of the world that we're living in. And yeah, the end of the movie, I'm pretty sure if you picked Alex Proyas's and David S. Goyer's brains about it, they couldn't tell you why he was able to do it. The point is that at that point it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's Neo. He can do whatever he wants.
Right. Oh, and by the way, okay, so The Matrix, just talking about two interesting things that were stolen from Dark City. The Matrix actually used a lot of the same sets that Dark City did. But second of all, come on, Requiem for a Dream, Jennifer Connelly out on the pier.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that one. Totally. Well, that Dark stole from. Wait, is Requiem came after?
Yeah, Requiem came after.
When did
Oh,
Requiem come out?
2000, 2001.
Wow.
oh wow, that's
Okay. I could have sworn that was a 90s movie, but interesting.
yeah, no, that's very
Yeah,
interesting.
Requiem came out. Yeah, Requiem came out in 2000.
See, we all feel this way because none of us saw this in 1998.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all interesting stuff. But I guess ultimately, as far as like talking about the themes and the ending and everything, it does feel like if he did say at some point, whether it's theatrical or the director's cut, that they brought them there, that maybe they were essentially kidnapped humans that were brought to this ship for this experiment. And then ultimately, what it was about is it was trying to they're trying to get to the essence of what is being a human, which again is the Star Trek reference. Star Trek is very big on that. And what is that essence, that thing that you can't really duplicate? I actually think this is a very good movie to either revisit or watch, like I said, like a new generation of moviegoers, just because it says something a little bit about AI. Because right now we're doing this. We're trying to experiment with how can we duplicate what it means to be a human and put that into a computer. And we don't even know, like we can't even figure it out completely. So it's an interesting subject. or like an interesting way to approach that subject without going directly for the AI approach, but going into like the reverse where aliens are like examining us. But it's definitely very unique, and that's why I definitely forgive anything that maybe comes off as either cringy or not very realistic. So it's a very, very good movie, and I'm very happy that it was made because it definitely made me think. Yeah, especially the first time I saw it, it kind of blew my mind. It was pretty. The ending was really, really good. Yeah, it really surprised me.
Yeah, and I mean, like the visuals, the music by Trevor Jones, I think it was,
Yep.
who kind of fell off the radar after Dark City. Um, really good. Performances. I think it's Kiefer Sutherland's best performance,
Oh, I don't
possibly.
know about that.
Well, it's up
That was
there.
good as a character actor type of performance.
Yeah,
Going all Igor there.
yeah. I mean, it's funkier than he's usually willing to do. I mean, he's usually Kiefer Sutherland playing Kiefer Sutherland. In this case, it didn't seem like he was playing Kiefer Sutherland. It seemed like he was really embodying somebody else. And Rufus Sewell, it's actually kind of interesting. I read somewhere that Rufus Sewell was talking about Dark City, and he had nothing but praise for the movie. And he actually just said, "I wish that I had just turned in a better performance."
Huh.
And I was like, uh, I mean, it's just one of those things where I don't want to go off the rails, but I look at Rufus Sewell's performance in that, and I mean, like, you can think about the noir elements of it, and maybe think, okay, maybe you should have had the screen presence like Humphrey Bogart, or maybe you should have been able to bring in like a Gary Oldman intensity to it. And I mean, 90% of male performances, if you bring in Gary Oldman, you're gonna be upgrading. But I mean, I think the fact that he was kind of an everyman made it stronger. Like the fact that he wasn't popping off the screen made the overall movie better. William Hurt gave a relatively subdued performance in compared to the rest of his career, and he was better as a result of it. So I think this is just one of those things where, I mean, Alex Proyas has had a roller coaster of a career, to put it lightly. But I mean, to me, this is his magnum opus. I mean, this is, I mean, if I were him, this would be the thing that I would just say, like, if you're going to watch one movie that I made, this is it.
Oh, it's definitely his best film for sure.
Yeah, I mean, The Crow was good, but
Yeah.
it's
Crow is
not
also
Dark City.
what would you call it? One of those cult classic kind of films for sure. But
Yeah,
it and it's a classic in and of itself. But those are his two best movies, and Dark City is far superior.
yeah. um,
Yeah, no, but I gotta say about the as far as like the acting, I do feel like the subdued thing worked well. I do feel I wonder if maybe Kiefer Sutherland would have gone a little bit more toned down, might have benefited it because I did like that William Hurt and Rufus Sewell, that they were very subdued. This connects a bit to the whole Tenet conversation that we had about the main character being not too necessarily charismatic, but just so there is something to be said. Like it works in this movie. It didn't work especially for you guys in Tenet. And it makes sense to some degree because that one's supposed to be an agent and a special person. This one's supposed to be like an everyday guy. But I did feel like that he has a special look, Rufus. And but there is something to be said where like Jack Nicholson and or Humphrey Bogart, like Chinatown is a great example of like somebody who's trying to solve a mystery, but his charisma in every scene is so apparent, and it makes the movie. But yes, here specifically, it works, and maybe that's true. It's better than in Tenet because we were supposed to be as confused as him, and it was good that he was confused, and it was good that he, even though he has a unique look, he didn't per se had very strong presence, because then we were focusing on the details and not about him, in a way of like a character study. So I do think that was a strength for the movie, the subtlety in the acting.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, when you compare John Murdoch to, those other characters that you mentioned, I mean, like, he's supposed to be lacking any of that confidence that goes along with them. Like, they know who they are and where they are and why they are where they are. And he literally doesn't know who he is. And I mean, again, especially once it's discovered that everybody is just living the implanted memories that these strangers are injecting into their minds. Nobody knows who he or she actually is. And I mean, and that's the real question. That's the real question that, the strangers were driving at, and that the movie is driving at, is like, are we really just the products of our past selves, or is there something innate within us that makes us different? Like, if you could literally wipe out somebody's past and turn him into whatever, is there something innate or inherent in the human existence that transcends our prior causes, that transcends our environments, that even transcends our memories? And I mean, that really gets at a really core philosophical question, and a rather polarizing one. But and the funny thing is, the way that the movie ends, I don't think it really 100% offers an answer, because the way that Murdoch ends up bringing the whole system down isn't by beating his prior causes, it's by Schrader injecting him with new prior causes and new prior knowledge. So, I mean, in a way, the movie's actually making an argument against free will while making an argument for free will while making an argument against free will. But I mean, that's basically how all those arguments turn out, isn't it? So.
No, but yeah, it's a good place to bring it to a conclusion. I don't know how I feel about it either. I know that in some of your comments about it or posts, you maybe brought that up a bit. But it does feel like that's the whole point of the movie, is that they know, so what they do know is that if they implant memories, they can have a certain trajectory for a life, but there's this slight element of chaos or just influence that go beyond just memories. That's maybe the essence of a person. That's which is technically it's DNA. I mean, that's essentially, because it's all is a combination of genetics and circumstances. There's something about our genetic makeup that does create this, whether it's an illusion or not, of free will. It does create this element of chaos of you can't really completely predict people's actions based on. That's something that I don't think anybody has ever been able to do. Again, I guess social media and stuff, they try to do that now. They have this thing about, like, algorithms that try to figure out what you want to watch next or what ads you might respond to more. And ultimately, we're a stubborn bunch. The thing with humans is that we're rebellious. If we notice that somebody is feeding us what we want too many times, we'll go the other way. it's you see that with kids, like I see with my kids too. So it's this spark to humans, that rebellious spark that exists, that goes beyond memories and beyond that's yeah. So I think that's a little bit of what it's about. I mean, as far as what we're seeking, what's that spark? How can we yeah, you can't just like say like we said, program an AI and say like, well, just randomly every once in a while make him feel like he wants to rebel. That's not a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea,
Yeah.
especially for an AI. But with humans, humans do some horrible acts and they kill a lot of people. So yes, that agent of chaos might not be a good thing. But at the same time, there's this other beauty to humanity and positive aspect that maybe I guess the aliens wanted to duplicate. Whether we want to duplicate it, that's another question. But yeah, that's I think that's a lot of it of what like the movie's about, and it's all curious and obviously like anything else, I would leave it up to the interpretation of the viewer. But again, it's good that there's those movies out there that bring up all those questions.
Yeah. So do we want to do our
Ranking
out of 10
or,
stars
out of
rankings?
10?
Yeah. I'll go last because I already know what mine is.
I never really thought about where I would rank this thing. It's definitely, I think it's like a really great movie. So I mean, for me, I'd probably put it around like an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I ranked it back then. I stopped ranking movies recently, but I saw it on IMDb that I did rank it back then. I think I gave it an 8, which might be what I would give it now. I There's some flaws to it. Yeah, I gave it an 8. I would say no, actually, yeah, no, because I said that I had a bigger impression of it the first time I watched it. So even back then, it was probably like an 8.5, like bordering on 9. It's just that it wasn't there just yet. And my reaction now is like, oh wow, this is very good. Maybe close to a 9. I can't. For some reason, there's too many things that like bother me slightly about it. So I would probably stick to like an 8.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the 9.5. If we're allowed to do halves, I would just say 9.5.
No one's saying you can't.
Yeah, I mean, there are just like one or two little shots that are just like, wow, that looks really dated, or they could have done that better, or there are a few things that, I mean, obviously I'm going to reserve perfect 10s to movies like Ivan's Childhood, or Schindler's List, or you know White Chicks or something like that. But yeah. No, yeah. I mean, again, it's not perfect, but to me, it's just one of those things where it just resonates with me. It has a special place in my heart. It's bold, and it's something that we don't really get very often nowadays. So